Varsity. Join the show on Twitter at Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Welcome to it, midweek editions here at Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency for all your equipment financing needs. Go Currency, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. And Elijah, how's that victory lap from last night on Twitter?
What do you mean?
With Donnie Raiola.
It's all right. It's I wouldn't call it a victory lap by any means.
It's okay.
But
You took to Twitter late last night and said, I told ya. Good work on your sources, man. Everyone rolls their eyes. Sources, right? Sources on social media. Socials with some a-hole on the radio. I've got sources. Well, listen, Elijah did some digging, some work, did some deductive reasoning, and said, you know what? There's a good shot Donnie Raiola stays. Husker Nation is enthralled.
Oh, yeah.
Not in a – it just depends who you bump into, who you ask. We will spend plenty of time because we can and do on Nebraska football, even though it's the off season, on Donnie Raiola. So that's on our mind. Does Nebraska basketball have more magic in them? They head to the great state of Indiana against the Hoosiers. The Hoosiers got their lunch money taken, which tends to happen in New Jersey the last time out. Are they ticked off? Is Nebraska poised and ready to make it 2 in a row against ranked squads? 2 of 3 straight. So we'll get there. Mike Babcock with us in 15 minutes from Varsity.com and magazine. I see Babbers in the green room right now. He must have hacked him off. He got out of his big leather chair and he just stormed off. So Babbers, we hope, in about 20 minutes. No, we'll talk with Mike Babcock shortly. We'll spend time with Mike Schuchart. Shuey's a golf dude, but he always has takes on football and basketball. They are unfiltered. It's like Boulevard wheat, right? He'll just lay it out there. So we'll talk with Shuey from Wilderness Ridge in about 30 minutes. And then Evan Bland from the World Herald. We'll spend time with Andy Markowski, hit the men's and women's Nebraska basketball thoughts as a couple of big wins and big matchups tonight for both teams. And then a Jock Doc on Lamar Jackson to wind it out. Numbers to get in can join us at 466-3776, 466-3776, toll free 800-825-5865. Some emails to get to when it comes to our interview yesterday with Bay City's head high school football coach. Some reaction there. We're streaming, and a lot of you have caught the show after the fact on podcast. We love you to do that, and we thank you for doing that. A lot of you listen live all over the state, which is wonderful. But this is day 2 of live YouTube TV, or at least the show streaming live on YouTube under the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. So check that out. You want to watch the show, interact that way. You're Mr. Technology, Elijah, so I'll let you monitor the comments. We can do so also in the StreamYard. If you watch on Facebook, ESPN Lincoln Facebook, ESPN Lincoln Twitter. And we invite you to follow Hail Varsity, the radio Twitter handle at HVarsity Radio. That's a great way to watch Coffee and Cream every morning. Listen to Damon and Andrew. We ask you to do that. Great folks do an awesome job. So be a part of the team. That's all the particulars. Offensive line, Donnie Raiola. Don't worry about cleaning your office out, son. You are sticking. You are staying. And it was a weird night last night because Football Scoop was out. And Football Scoop is Nebraska hiring John Garrison. And then there's a loud roar you may or may not have heard from Nebraska football fans because John Garrison's a really awesome offensive line coach, really good player, was instrumental in putting some of Nebraska's better offensive lines, not just of recent memory, but overall, taking guys that ended up playing in the league. And despite some tough circumstances with injury, Nebraska's offensive line, you pair the linemen and you pair the running backs that were running back then, Rex and Roy and of course Amir, it was a great unit. They were running for 230 yards a game, 215, and it worked. It worked really well. So John Garrison's doing well at NC State. And it goes from John Garrison to different outlets reporting, I think, Rivals, I think On 3, I think the World Herald, all saying, no, it's Donnie Raiola. As a Nebraska fan, how do you feel about that?
That's a loaded question.
That's the loaded question, but that is the question. And I'll give my take, and Elijah, you lay out some of your intel on the why, and then what's the O-line going to look like with Raiola. It'll be vastly different, or it better be, than last year. But my take on Donnie Raiola is I don't think he had a lot of confident players to work with. I think he had guys that felt bad about no more Greg Austin. I think he had an idea of what he wanted to do, and that was more power-based. And I think those guys could have been capable at doing better. And then I think you had a sushi chef and you had a meat and potatoes guy working together for an offense. You pick who's who, but the physical brand of ball, getting away from the zone blocking, and then Whipple wanting to throw it or go empty on 4th and short. The run game that was non-existent when you had to run the football, the offensive line coach is going to get blamed for that. So I don't think the Whipple-Raiola dynamic did anybody any favors. You factor in Nuri being out, you factor in Teddy getting hurt, you factor in Turner having to flip-flop to a third position now in 3 years. You have a confidence issue probably with Benhart, and then you have some guys that are awesome dudes that are just limited with Bando and Hickson.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's your line. And then if somebody goes down, you're playing a young pup that can be really good in Lutoski, and then you had Hunter Anthony come in and give some minutes because Benhart had a bad stretch there about 3 or 4 games in. It was a mess. It's hard to sift through and have an absolute grade on him because of everything, the whole ball of wax that he was dragging around. That's my take. Let me see him another year with these kids. That's what you're getting. Would I take Garrison over him? Absolutely. That's not what's happened. And I do think Matt Rule is an offensive line, dare I say, guru. That's where he's cut his teeth. That's what he loves doing. That's what he's about, physical football. He's going to make sure that line is his personality. And after enough interviews and sit-downs, I think him and Raiola are on the same page. He felt really good about what Raiola's philosophy is. I can work with that. I think he knows what he's doing. All right, let's just keep the guy we got. There's your answer.
Well, there's a couple things to dive into here for me. And the first is I see a comment coming in from YouTube, and we do see all your comments. Feel free to leave your comments on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you watch us. Drop us a comment. If you listen on radio, email Schmitty. It's Chris at
HailVarsity.com,
yeah.
Yes.
But comment in here from Brett saying, do you think Dylan Raiola is still in plan? I want to lay one thing out completely clearly, and that's that no one who is related to Donovan Raiola has anything to do with Donovan being hired in this position or rehired.
You're not going to make that hire.
It's not about Dylan. It's not about Dominic. It's not about those guys. It's about Raiola, and I think this hire was made based on potential for what Matt Rule sees within Donnie Raiola. And Matt Rule's made a career off of this, of finding a guy who is young, who is hungry, who has the experience and the know-how to be able to eventually be a very good position coach, and to take him under the wing and say, you know what, you might not know how to be a great coach right now, but I'm going to show you how to be a great coach, and we're going to be in this together until you make that next step. And Donovan Raiola, I don't think he did a perfect job with the Nebraska offensive line last year. I think he was dealt a very bad hand, and I'm going to name drop here for just a second because I can now that he's graduated. I ran into Brock Bando last spring, and I
your
saw him around. Your
teammates, your friends.
I saw him around, and I said, man, how was spring ball? And you look a little bit different. How's that new conditioning program under Raiola? Is he whipping you guys into shape? What's going on with that? And he goes, well, we as an offensive line are all down a whole bunch of weight following spring ball. He said he
Be
was
specific. Lay it out. I mean, what was Raiola asking them to do? Let's just talk about the summer plan and then what happened with fall, and quite honestly, what they had to shift into.
And I hope Brock's not mad at me. He shouldn't be. He's graduated now. It's not like it's going to affect his playing time. So I'll lay it out. And that's that. Brock is a guy that since he's been in college has been at that 310 pound weight the entire time he's been in college. Whenever I talked to him this spring, I'm like, you look different. And he's like, I'm sitting around 260, 265 pounds.
265.
So he was down roughly 40, 50 pounds through spring ball, and that was because Donovan Raiola was trying to, as you said, shift back to more of a power run style, a style that suits him, and to do that, he wanted to reshape a lot of bodies along this offensive line. And the whole plan was to drop some weight through spring and try to build them back up in a different way this summer. And I think we can see, based on the results of this offensive line and how they looked out there, that wasn't enough time to try and do all of that work. Trying to build these guys up, make them lose 40 pounds, and let's build 40 pounds back up this offseason and build you up in a different way. That's a time crunch to do it. And additionally,
is that his idea? Is that Frost's idea? Is that strength and conditioning's idea that here's the timeline we have? You're on a diet, and then through strength and nutrition, we're going to build you back up 35, 40 pounds, so you're still at that 300 number, and then boom, you have a new body, new mobility to go into Big Ten season this year.
Well, it was an attempt to try to make these guys look more like Big Ten offensive linemen. They haven't quite looked like that through the first few years of the Frost era, and last offseason's effort was an effort to try to make these guys more constructed from a body size type of looking like Big Ten offensive linemen. And when you're doing that, you're forced to sacrifice a little bit of technique work, a little bit of the X's and O's of football, because you're trying to do so much body changing. Then when fall camp rolls around, now it's, well, now we got your bodies closer to where we want them to be, and we had a time crunch. I'm not sure if we were able to do it perfectly how we wanted to do it within 6 months. That's a short amount of time to try and do that. And now you're going, well, now we have your bodies different. Now this is the time to dive into X's and O's and technique and try to get that right. And he was just up against a time crunch. Combine it with the fact that this is an offensive line that lost probably its best returning starter in Nuruddin. And then you had an injury early in the year to Teddy Prochazka, another guy who was limited through much of the offseason, goes down with another injury. That's another guy that you think was probably going to be a pretty significant contributor this year. And now what are you left with Donovan Raiola? And you're trying to build up technique, and he was put in a very, very tough spot. And I do believe that you're not going to stick and stay in the NFL for 4 years as an assistant offensive line coach unless you know what you're doing.
Or be at Notre Dame.
You're not going to be at Notre Dame unless you know what you're doing. You're not going to be a 4-year starter at Wisconsin unless you know how the offensive line works. And from what I saw last year, I do think this offensive line improved as the year went on. Run blocking, marginal improvement, but especially in pass protection, this was an offensive line that could not keep Casey Thompson off the ground for a 4 or 5 game stretch in the middle of the season. And then by the end of the year, you're looking at Wisconsin, you're looking at Iowa. The offensive line was actually able to give him some time in the pocket. He was able to find Trey Palmer. There was improvement there, and I think that's why Matt Rule is looking at this and hiring based off potential. It's not about Dylan. It's not about Jim Leonard. It's not about any of that. It's about hiring a guy that you think has potential to be a very good offensive line coach, and Matt Rule thinks that he can take this guy and Donovan Raiola, take him under his wing, and turn him into a very good offensive line coach. It's about potential. I'm not sitting here saying that Donovan Raiola was a great offensive line coach last year, but I don't think he was atrocious. I don't think he was bad, and I think Matt Rule sees potential.
It ain't all on him. Mm-hmm. Okay, it ain't all on Don Raiola. And if Rule is going to follow suit with taking an unknown, building up, and together they achieve high levels of competency. And there's also he looks at Raiola as a development guy. He thinks Donnie can teach the right techniques and get the O-line developed. He needs time to do it. You need time to do it on the offensive line. And you're going on, okay, Lutoski's been in the program a while, Ben Hart's been here a while, Teddy's been here a while, and half of these guys haven't had an off-season to just work. It's been an off-season to rehab, because they're hurt. And to Elijah's point about reshaping your body, you know, you have Turner that was probably slated at playing left guard, body-wise, okay? And then Teddy goes down, Nebraska's best options to throw out a former left tackle, although he's not had a ton of technique work there, grand scheme of things. So you throw Turner out at left tackle. Well, they've moved his body shape to be a guard. You're in trouble. That's just one example of Murphy's Law for that offensive line. On top of the fact, how much run inside and outside zone did you practice with contact with Whipple? He wants to throw the football. You're good at what you emphasize. Every coach says that, and if you emphasize the pass, don't expect to be great at 3rd and 1, getting it against Iowa or Wisconsin or Illinois. Who's with us?
We got Pete on the line.
Pete, go ahead. Thanks for calling.
How you doing today?
We're good. We got about 30 seconds. Fire away.
I guess what I've seen on the offensive line, and I welcome your comments, I've seen a lot of flat-footedness. I did not see the athletic ability in the offensive line. A good offensive line, you really got to have good feet, and you got to move your feet and always be in a leverage position. And maybe that can come, but that's kind of what I've seen. I think maybe we need a little better athletic offensive line.
Pete, good stuff. Don't disagree with you.
That kind of speaks to the position that Raiola was put in with these guys, trying to turn them into something that they're not within a 6-month period.
Are they not that, or do you need more time than 6 months to turn them into those athletes? We'll talk some more O-line. We'll get to more of your comments. Mike Babcock with us. Hail Varsity continues, presented by Currency.
If you're not already a Hail Varsity subscriber, what are you waiting for? Sign up for a Hail Varsity subscription to receive exclusive breaking news coverage of Nebraska football, volleyball, and more. Subscriptions include 10 print issues of the Hail Varsity magazine per year, the annual Hail Varsity football yearbook, plus complete access to everything on hailvarsity.com. Visit hailvarsity.com to sign up today and get your first month free.
Uh-oh, Brad's buzzed.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he's starting with the woots. And now a speech.
I just want to say that friendship is about heart and brain. Who's with me?
Good thing is, he knows when he's buzzed.
And my brain is saying, when it's time to go home, somebody call me a ride.
Love that guy.
Me too.
Know your buzzed warning signs? Call for a ride when it's time to go home. Buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
The holidays are here, and it's time to celebrate at Hail Varsity Club. Whether you're looking for an intimate business lunch or a 100-person holiday party, Hail Varsity Club offers an elevated experience with food and drink packages sure to please any crowd. There are only a few premium dates left in December. Visit hailvarsityclub.com to learn more about the private events and book yours now.
If you're not already a Hail Varsity subscriber, what are you waiting for? Sign up for a Hail Varsity subscription to receive exclusive breaking news coverage of Nebraska football, volleyball, and more. Subscriptions include 10 print issues of the Hail Varsity magazine per year, the annual Hail Varsity football yearbook, plus complete access to everything on hailvarsity.com. Visit hailvarsity.com to sign up today and get your first month free.
Ad paid for by the Sentinel Group. Attention Marines, military personnel, families, and contractors who were stationed at Camp Lejeune. Were you present at Camp Lejeune between August 1953 and December of 1987? You may be entitled to significant compensation. For nearly 34 years, those in the Marine Corps' base Camp Lejeune were exposed to contaminated drinking water, resulting in devastating injuries, including several forms of cancer, adverse birth outcomes, Parkinson's disease, and more. North Carolina's procedural laws have prevented victims from getting the justice they deserve, but passage of the Camp Lejeune Justice Act of 2022 would allow you or a loved one to file lawsuit seeking compensation for illnesses and injuries linked to the toxic water. Call today for your free consultation. 800-532-4724. Let our experienced attorneys fight to get you the compensation you deserve, and you pay nothing unless there's a recovery in your favor. Call 800-532-4724. That's 800-532-4724. Again, 800-532-4724.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for spending time at Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency. You can watch the show on the Hail Varsity YouTube channel, also streaming on Hail Varsity's Twitter handle, Hail Varsity Radio's Twitter handle, at HVarsity Radio. Follow Mike Babcock at MD Babs on Twitter. Babbers, we have this roadie all sorts of planned out. It's grown to Boulder. We were joking yesterday with Matt Schick, and whether you know it or not, you're renting a Sherman tank for us. Jay Moore is in as our muscle once we get the Boulder, and then Schick may meet us after he's done hanging out with Coach Prime. But it's grown from you, me, and Elijah to go see a Grateful Dead show and then go to the pre and post game in Nebraska, Colorado festivities to Jay Moore wearing eye black. and Schick probably wearing buff gear. So let me know if you can find that 18-wheeler Sherman tank throwback. No, there's not. There's never a dull moment with Nebraska football. I want to get your reaction to the freak out, I guess, over Donnie Raiola coming back. And I got nothing personal. I want to see, as a guy who grew up in this state, good offensive line play for Nebraska. It's, dare I say, a birthright, okay? And Nebraska needs to get back to that to be competitive and win in the Big Ten. I think Coach Rule gets that. Do you trust Rule's judgment here with retaining Donnie? And you've had conversations with Donnie and some of the roundtable sit-downs. Those were minimal with Coach Raiola, but I think he knows offensive line play. He just hasn't had a long sample size to show it.
Well, I would respect Rule's decision to make that a line coach. It's his responsibility, and that's what he thinks he needs to do. This is totally unrelated, but it is related in my mind. Did you watch the USC-Utah game the other night for the Pac-12?
USC is going to look like they're going to have a heck of a hard time living in the Big Ten week to week.
Yeah. And I thought Utah played exactly the way you play when you're in the Big Ten. You know, I think Kyle Whittingham had that team was just grit, and they were grinders. And that's the way Nebraska has to be. And I think that if Coach Rule thinks that Donovan Raiola is the guy that can get the job done to get that offense going, because that's where it starts with the offensive line, then I respect his choice. I mean, he's making a lot of money to make those kind of decisions, and he's comfortable with that. So let's move forward and see if that can happen. The other thing in that respect that he mentioned at the news conference when he was introduced was something about physical practices. Do you remember that? I mean, yeah. I think that's really important in the development of the offensive line is you have to have physical practices. And you run the risk, I guess, of guys getting hurt. But in the long run, it becomes one of those cliche kind of things. It's tougher in practice than it is when you get to the game.
Now, Mike, do you think that Matt Rule went back and watched some film from practice last year and was counting up how many offensive linemen were throwing up at any given practice? You think that played into this?
I don't know. I don't know if that played into it or not. Maybe you should be the offensive line coach.
The old allied puke count.
Well, some head coaches would think that's a pretty important statistic. I don't want to go back to Pukegate too hard, but maybe that's where this all started. Maybe Matt Rule saw that and said, "That's what I want in my offensive line coach."
Yeah, well, you know, it's not an easy thing. You know, it's a tough thing to be to play that position and to be successful at that position. You have to commit, and you make some sacrifices in order to do it. But again, I think that if Coach Rule thinks that Donovan Raiola is the person to get the job done, and I appreciate your comment about, it's not about Dominic Raiola, it's not about Dylan Raiola, it's about Donovan. Can he get the job done? And that, I think Coach Rule thinks that he can. And,
Mike, on a serious note here, and I think this kind of gets to the point you're making, is I don't think this decision was based on what Matt Rule saw from Donovan Raiola last year. I think that probably played a little bit into it. And I think that may be why this took so long to get announced, probably because Raiola probably wasn't his first choice to be offensive line coach. But I don't think this hire was made based on what Raiola did last year, but more based on the potential that Matt Rule sees within Raiola to be an offensive line coach.
Yeah, I think the potential that he sees, and even though he was an assistant offensive line coach in the NFL, he had that kind of experience, and I think that Rule looks at that, that's a significant part of it, that's important, that they can connect on that level.
Mike Babcock with us from Hail Varsity Magazine, hailvarsity.com, at MDBabs on Twitter. Mike, a thought here with a job that's now open, and that is Purdue. We'll get to Husker Hoops in a moment. But the Purdue gig's open. Brohm headed to Louisville. He's headed home there. It's incredible for him to take Purdue to a Big Ten title game. And they're going to be a yo-yo program. And I mean, 8-4, 9-4, impressive. But, are you going to have a Northwestern type down here? Very possible at Purdue. Louisville's had a little more sustainability, at least with talent in the region. Is that a job that if you're Purdue, you go look at Jim Leonard to pluck him from Wisconsin, or do you think Leonard makes a lateral move, maybe to Nebraska? Nebraska takes a big swing financially at him because of his perceived relationship with Raiola. First of all, teammates, but second of all, go stick it to Wisconsin every year with the other Big Red.
That's a good question. I think that Leonard, it would seem that Leonard and Chris earlier had a great connection with the players. That's the thing that impressed me most. And it probably began with Chris, but I think it carried down to Leonard, so that when that decision was made not to hire him, there were a lot of players that weren't real happy with that whole situation. Connection with players, I think that's important. I think that's really a good thing. And I think it would be a good decision on Nebraska's part, or a good hire on Nebraska's part, if they could bring him in. I don't know if he's looking at the opportunity that Purdue represents. It surprised me a little bit that Brohm would leave, because I thought he had Purdue going in a direction that Purdue hasn't had for a while. Mm-hmm. And, so that was a tough deal. It's almost like the transfer portal here with coaches. Like we're looking at this situation in the Big Ten, and we've got a couple of new coaches. We're going to have another one. They're moving around here. And of course, everybody's talking about Colorado and Deion Sanders. It comes back to me a little bit like transfer portal time here with coaches. But getting back to the question, I think it would be a good hire for Nebraska if they could get Leonard, because of the experience and the relationship between the coach, Raiola and Leonard. But again, I don't know where that stands, and I don't know what his aspirations are, possibly to be a head coach.
Yeah, and Mike, I'm sort of in the boat that I think that's a little bit of wishful thinking, but I think Nebraska can get his attention with the kind of salary pool that Matt Rule has for his assistant coaches. I think with a right-sized offer, I think you could get his attention, but then I also look back to the fact that he could be looking for a head coaching gig in college, or he could even be looking at NFL to go be a defensive coordinator. I mean, his services are in high demand right now, and while I think Nebraska could realistically be in play if they make the right offer in terms of dollars and cents, it still seems like wishful thinking just with the amount of opportunities that I'm sure Jim Leonard will have.
Well, he turned Green Bay down, a year ago. So his phone's been probably ringing off the hook.
But he does fit the mold of what Matt Rule says he wants in assistant coaches in terms of young and hungry and looking to prove themselves.
Well, you've got Raiola retained. He's a Big Ten guy because of his time at Wisconsin. Okay. You go get Leonard, he's absolutely a Big Ten guy and a former interim. So that helps beef up your staff and your knowledge of the league with a number of these guys coming into the league for the first time. I want to wrap with this. Thoughts on Nebraska basketball. The men have another tough task. They're at Indiana tonight, but, man, they've got some momentum going. How do you feel about tip-off here coming up with the Big Red at Indiana?
Well, I think if they can play with the kind of grit that they played against Creighton, I think it's going to be an interesting game at Indiana. The problem is it's at Indiana for one thing, and the other thing is Indiana has a good team. No question about that. But I was really impressed because Creighton has a really good team as far as I'm concerned, and Nebraska with that grit and that defense, and we've got a couple of black shirts there on basketball. Now, I think that makes it more anticipation than I would have had if I hadn't seen that Creighton game. You know, if Creighton game had gone the way I expected it to go, I probably wouldn't be too fired up to see what was going to happen at Indiana. But because of that, because I see and the difference that it's made with Derek Walker back, I think that's been significant. So I think Nebraska will, with the grit, will give Indiana a go.
Mike, what's your take on candy-striped warm-up pants? That's been something that's been going through my mind today. I think it's a bit of a fashion faux pas. I get the whole classic look behind it, but what's your take?
I'll pass on that question.
You're not wearing candy-striped warm-ups right now, Bebbers.
No, I don't have anything that would be considered candy stripe.
I think that answers the question. That answers the question what Mike thinks of him.
Babbers is rocking some corduroy right now, I think. I like it. So no for Mike Babcock on owning a pair of candy stripe, but no comment on them as a fashion choice. Mike,
right. Whatever the choice, whoever makes the choice, that's their business, not mine.
Yeah, that's an old Bob Knight thing. So do it that as you will. And an undefeated season in a national championship speaks for itself. Way back in '76. Mike, be good. Enjoy your week. We'll check in next week. Thanks for your time.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me, guys.
There he is. Love him. There he is, Mr. Husker Football, Mike Babcock. At MD Babs on Twitter's where you find him. We'll head to the golf course. Mike Schuchart will have some, no doubt, some thoughts on hoops and football. Evan Bland, less than an hour away on Hail Varsity.
Football season is underway, so now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. Just sign up with promo code PLAY. FanDuel has all your favorite bets from the money line to point spread to player props. So sign up today with promo code PLAY for your no-sweat first bet. Make every moment more this season with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
21 plus in select states. First on real money wager only. Refund issued as non-withdrawable free bets that expires in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG in Colorado, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Illinois, and Virginia. 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP 53342 in Arizona. 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut. 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana. 1-800-522-4700 or visit KSGamblingHelp.com in Kansas. 1-877-770-STOP Louisiana. 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 in New York. Tennessee Redline 1-800-889-9789 in Tennessee. 1-800-522-4700 in Wyoming or visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net in West Virginia.
Coming up tonight from the 1011 newsroom, a lot of window repairs have been needed in one Lincoln neighborhood this past week. Someone went on a spree of throwing rocks and bricks at homes. What we know about the suspect and how much damage was done. And we remember the attack on Pearl Harbor 81 years ago today, the special ceremony that took place in Lincoln. These stories and more tonight.
Hey, it's Chris Schmidt. Tackle your holiday shopping with all your Husker friends and meet members of the Pipeline, Nebraska's offensive line, Saturday, December 10th from noon to 2 at Alumni Hall's downtown location. Members of the Nebraska offensive line will have samples of their brand new Pipeline jerky. 2 delicious flavors to sample, and everything in the store will have Santa-approved discounts on merchandise, too. Spread some holiday Husker cheer and sample some Pipeline jerky. Saturday, December 10th from noon to 2, 1120 P Street. Pipeline jerky will be sold at both Alumni Hall locations, but the event is only for the downtown location, 1120 P Street. No purchase is necessary for photos or autographs from the athletes. They'll have some great autographed footballs you can get some signatures as well. You live closer to South Point? Don't worry. They'll have Pipeline jerky and Santa specials at that location as well. Meet members of the Pipeline, noon to 2, 1120 P Street, Saturday, December 10th at Alumni Hall's downtown location.
Get in the holiday spirit with Zoo Lights powered by LES. The Lincoln Children's Zoo transforms into one of the largest displays in the Midwest, including a 40-foot Christmas tree, over 30 lit animal silhouettes, a 60-foot light tunnel, and more. You won't want to miss the brand new light experiences added this year. Stop by a s'mores or hot cocoa station for tasty treats, or take a holiday train ride. Proceeds from Zoo Lights powered by LES directly support the zoo and animals in the winter months. Complete info and tickets at lincolnzoo.org.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Busy hour 2 on the way. Andy Markowski joins us to talk Husker basketball, men's and women's, and we'll spend time with Evan Bland. We head to the golf course. Pretty pleasant day, maybe a little bit chilly to putt for Purdue, but Mike Schuchart's making sure those greens stay beautiful. Wilderness Ridge, where you find Mike Schuchart. Shuey, how's the week been? How you doing, man?
Doing good.
You are
waiting for some white snow to fall. So I'm sure that's it.
You're it.
That's right.
Hey, I was saying to him during the break, I'm hoping for a white Christmas this year. It's been a while.
I'll be in Arizona, so you guys do whatever the hell you want.
Yeah, boy.
Shuey, you're as big a Nebraska fan as there is, man. You love football, you love hoops. So take me through your Sunday with Nebraska Creighton. I'm sure you were a little loud and proud.
Actually, I think I was in a lesson, so I didn't really get to watch it until I got out of the lesson and I looked on my phone and it said Nebraska was up by 10, and I about fainted. So I'm like, how did that happen? So very impressive, man. That was exciting to see.
Well, they have another shot to kind of prove it or play well against another ranked team, but optimism's been fleeting around some of the major programs. And a win like that brings a little bit back. A hire like Rule brings a little bit back. And, onward and upward, as they say. So the big news today has been Donnie Raiola being retained. And what's your take? What's your thought? Is it all his, air quote, fault for the offensive line play? Or do you look at it from a coach's perspective that there are things outside of your control that you're trying to wrangle that takes longer than a year?
Well, I was pretty harsh on that
unit
part of the offense.
You and me both. You and me both, Chewy.
That it's like, wow, it's like, what has he brought to the table? But then as I listened more to people that I trust and believe that know, I think some of his faults were that he was a little handcuffed in what he was able to do. It's like some of the things that I think he wanted to do and thought would work. I'm not sure that Whipple was on the same page of running kind of the same things. So I think some of that was he was a little handcuffed, being able to do exactly what he wanted to do. It was, he's only been there a year. It wasn't very good, but at least at the end of the season, it showed signs of being better. So I don't know. That was probably the most surprising, because personally, I thought he'd be one of the first guys to go, and now he's one of the probably only ones they're going to retain. So, I mean, pretty surprising when I look at it. It's like you got to trust your Rule, that he saw something or sees something. He's an NFL guy, and he's a very intense guy, and he's a really hard work guy. So I think he obviously saw a lot of things in there he liked, that he thinks he can do a good job. So I'm going to trust in what he thinks at this point in time.
Mike Schuchart's with us here. It's Hail Varsity Radio. And Mike, Schmidt hit on this in his last question, just kind of related to optimism. And I think for some Husker fans out there today, maybe took away a little optimism along the offensive line. And I'm not in that boat. I'm still in wait and see mode with Raiola. I'm not fully on board. I'm not fully against it. I do have some trust in Rule, and I can see why Rule made this hire. But just give me your general feeling surrounding the major men's sports in Nebraska with the basketball team and the football team. I think if you would have asked this question a month ago, a lot of people would have been pretty down on both these programs. But now the Husker football team took down Iowa, a new head coach in place. The Husker basketball teams beat Creighton. It almost feels like a new day in Nebraska.
No question. I mean, optimism winning cures a lot of things, you know. And when you see like a basketball team, man, beating Creighton for I don't know how long time. So when you see them, you know, take down somebody that they've had a hard time with, how they played, you know, and they, you know, same with football. You're bringing in somebody that's, you know, looking at his resume and what he's done in the past. That brings optimism to what possibly can be. So, I mean, it's like you said, a month ago, not a whole lot of optimism in anything. You know, a month later, there's a ton of optimism on what the potential is and where they can go. And you had a basketball team that actually showed it. So that you know, brings even more optimism on what possibly could happen. They play good tomorrow, win or lose. I think they be competitive in what they're doing. Again, optimism. So winning cures a lot of things.
Mike Schuchart's with us, Wilderness Ridge Golf. Schuey, get a switch over to golf. You got the match going Saturday. You have Rory, Jordan Spieth, and Justin Thomas. It's going to be outside the Pelican Club. You played Pelican?
I have not.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Take me through what do you think here about this 12-hole match with Tiger and Rory and Jordan and Justin?
It'll be very entertaining. I mean, you got Tiger. Anytime Tiger's in the field, I mean, it brings a lot of excitement. Rory had one of the best seasons probably ever, of Tiger-ish type of season. And then you got the guys everybody loves, you know, Jordan and Justin. So it'll be really fun. It'll be a lot of trash talk to you. I found it interesting. I read an article the other day that Tiger was talking to his son, Charlie.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, son, don't imitate my golf swing. Imitate Rory's. So I thought that was quite interesting. I mean, Tiger, arguably the best that's ever played, is telling his kid to copy somebody else. So that was pretty interesting.
Mike, while we're talking Tiger in the match, Tiger had an interview a couple days ago where he said that the best non-golfers he's ever golfed with are either John Smoltz or Tony Romo. And I want to pose that question. Who's
the kicker. So I was in Arizona playing one time, and he just happened to join a group, and I knew who he was because being a sports guy. So we went out and played. Now he was really good. I was very impressed. Al Del Greco.
Not Chris Schmidt?
No. Shuey, bless Shuey's heart. Shuey's not ever sat in the cart with me and dared to play with me. Shuey be dehydrated and being sick watching me play.
No.
But no, Shuey's the best. Get to Wilderness Ridge, talk to Shuey about lessons, about some training, for sure that membership so you can get on the course when it warms up. And Shuey, lots going on here around the holiday season, about 30 seconds. Wilderness, always a great spot to do some holiday celebrating.
Always. They got, what is it? Christmas with Santa. I think that's on Sunday. So
that's awesome.
See a lot of kids out there sitting on Santa's lap and enjoying that. So that's fun. So we'll have our Christmas sales going on. Lights are up. Music's playing. So it's a great time.
I'm going to go see old Saint Nick and sit on his lap and see if he goes bad Santa on me or not. Forcibly removed. I'm just kidding. Mike Schuchart's with us. Wilderness Ridge Golf. Get logged on to wildernessridgegolf.com and check into membership special sales and, of course, the lessons with Shuey. Shuey, we love you, brother. We'll talk next week. Thanks for the time.
You bet. Thanks for having me on. Stay safe.
All right, we'll do, partner. There he is, Mike Schuchart. Evan Bland coming up. Andy Markowski on the way. It's Hail Varsity. We're presented by Currency.
Listen to this station anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Odyssey. That's AUDACY.
Hey, listener. Welcome to Limu's Karaoke Lounge, where Liberty Mutual customizes your car insurance so you only pay for what you need, and the music never stops. Hit it!
There's an emu with a full-time job. His partner's Doug, but Limu's the heartthrob. Grubs and worms, that's what Limu eats. Gonna fuel up to save you money and hit the streets.
Only pay for what you need at libertymutual.com.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Nacho fries are back at Taco Bell. You know, the fries covered in bold Mexican spices you dip in a warm nacho cheese sauce. You could also dunk them in nacho cheese sauce or pour the sauce onto a pile of them and create like a nacho fries nachos. The thing is that you eat them with nacho cheese sauce. That's what makes them nacho fries. Otherwise, you're just eating fries and sipping on nacho cheese sauce, and that's the wrong way. Sorry, just really passionate about nacho fries.
Nacho fries are back, only at Taco Bell. At participating U.S. Taco Bell locations for a limited time only while supplies last. Contact local store for hours and participation which vary.
President Kennedy called on Americans to ask not what our country can do for us, but what we can do for our country. We Nebraskans have always defined ourselves by our strong desire to help others. This holiday season, Serve Nebraska encourages Nebraskans to share their time and resources to offer a helping hand to those in need. Because this is what Nebraskans do. Nebraskans volunteer. Paid for by Serve Nebraska, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
The great thing about your phone or tablet is having information right at your fingertips. Who's that guy in the movie? Where's the best deal? Stuff like that. Of course, for insurance, you can't beat your Battle Creek Mutual Independent Agent and the new Battle Creek mobile app. Carry electronic proof of insurance, review policy info, pay your bill, or connect with your agent. And it's ready to help if you have an accident. Download the app for your device at bcmutual.com. Battle Creek Mutual Insurance. Better together.
I'm weatherology meteorologist Ray Miller with your Capital City forecast. A winter weather advisory goes into effect late tonight. Cloudy skies with a low of 24. Freezing rain and sleet Thursday with a high around 37 degrees. That's the forecast on Lincoln's ESPN. Right now, it's 33.
Get your sports fix here. ESPN Lincoln is on the air at 101.5 FM and 1480 AM. Online at espnlincoln.com. And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Hour 2 on the way. It's Hail Varsity. We're presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Streaming here in the StreamYard and also on Hail Varsity, the YouTube channel. It's live and in full HD goodness. That Elijah, get a little closer. That stash and the whiskers are coming through a little bit. You're trying to go full St. Nick. Chad emails in. Chad in Hastings can hear us in Hastings on 1416, 1550 and 92.7, 92.1 with Doug Duda and crew out there. Today, a great day. Jeff Brohm is out of the Big Ten West. Hell, that's almost better than getting Matt Rule. Kind of kidding. Hopefully now Purdue gets a lame ass for their coach.
Well, the thing is Purdue, what set them apart from the rest of the Big Ten, aside from maybe Maryland, is just how different they were every single week.
How good he was offensively.
Well, yeah, Brohm, but it presented a different challenge than just about anyone else in the Big Ten. Like, you looked at Nebraska's stretch at the end of the season, your game plan for Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa, all those teams.
Volleyball.
Pretty similar game plan. But then, Purdue's coming to town. We got to install a completely different game plan this week. It always made things very difficult when you went and played Purdue. And that's why you saw a lot of big dogs in the Big Ten seemingly out of nowhere go struggle against a team like Purdue. So I'll be curious to see what Purdue does next, whether they want to stay being the weird different kid on the block, or if they want to go back and be more of a traditional Big Ten type team by installing a guy like, Jim Leonard. It's curious to see what they're going to do.
Such a great hire for them, because they had some signature moments where they had their win a couple of years ago in Iowa City when Iowa was number 2. They had their let's dismantle Ohio State on national TV. Let's also find a quarterback every year and just have that quarterback develop and improve, and chucked around Aiden O'Connell this year in year 74. But point is they have quarterbacks in that region. They're kind of an afterthought in their own state. There's Indiana basketball, there's Notre Dame football, then there's Purdue, but they have won, 17 and I think 8 in his last 2 years, a Big Ten West title. They beat Illinois this year, so they could muscle up. They had a bad outing. They got dominated defensively by Jim Leonard, but they also had some impressive wins, and they escaped with their life against Nebraska. So they are, I don't want to say they're inconsistent. They're just not dominant, but they've had their share of wins against the Iowas. They've been really good against Nebraska. They, I think, had a wow win where, again, they got to play bully ball and won at Minnesota. Got a little lucky with no Mo Ibrahim that day, but Purdue earned it, and it was a log jam for the West this year. It was down, but hey, so
I'll be curious. I'll be curious to see if Purdue goes and gets somebody who's a little bit more traditionally Big Ten, or if they try to keep this going. Because, I mean, you might have just caught lightning in a bottle with a guy in Jeff Brohm that can come in and play something completely different.
He gets it. He's that good at scheming. Period.
And this almost brings me back to what we've been talking about all hour with Donovan Raiola. And one of the main selling points with him is the fact that he knows the Big Ten, and knowing the Big Ten is so important in this conference. I mean, he's only coached 1 year in the Big Ten, and I think he took some lumps last year on that learning process as a coach, but he spent 4 years as a Wisconsin offensive lineman, and knowing the Big Ten is so important. And I do wonder how much that played in with Matt Rule keeping Raiola around.
Here's the true question that we don't know. Is he a bad chef, or did he have stale groceries? That's it.
Or was he trying to use some groceries to fit into a meal that didn't quite work?
Right. He was serving vegetarian lasagna to a bunch of hungry meat eaters. Right. Evan Bland, he'll weigh in. We're not anti-Donnie hire at all. Really, it kind of fits the Rule wheelhouse. More on that with Evan Bland coming up hour 2 on Hail Varsity.
Anyone who has ever needed self-storage knows what a hassle it can be. You have to rent or borrow a truck and then find someone to help you move your stuff. And let's face it, moving furniture and heavy items without damaging them isn't easy. Renting the unit is worse. The hidden fees and admin costs are scarier than the dingy facilities you're leaving your stuff in. Why not use Closet Box instead? Closet Box is self-storage without leaving home. They'll pick up your belongings, store them securely, and bring any item back when you need it. The best part? Unlike traditional self-storage, you only pay for what you store. No paying for unused storage space. Closet Box's background check storage movers are licensed, bonded, and insured and will take care of all of the heavy lifting. Closet Box's local storage centers are temperature controlled and monitored 24/7. Closet Box has an A+ rating from the BBB. Call 877-233-5696 now for the season's best rates. Get $50 off first month storage using code RADIO50. That's 877-233-5696. 877-233-5696.
Head to ESPNLincoln.com now and enter for your chance to win a $25 Jet Splash Car Wash gift card. Jet Splash Car Wash gift cards make the perfect holiday gift for anyone on your list and excellent stocking stuffer. Go to ESPNLincoln.com now and enter for your chance to win a $25 Jet Splash gift card, and head to JetSplash.com to see complete info on their locations, hours, memberships, and offers. Jet Splash Car Wash, Lincoln's premier spot for a spotless wash online at JetSplash.com.
Hi, this is Pastor Tom with People's City Mission. We're Lincoln's homeless shelter, and this winter, the mission expects to house and feed over 80% of the city's homeless. Because when the weather gets cold out there, here's where people come to. But in this current economy, providing them with a warm bed and a hot meal, it's getting a lot harder to do. And we really need your help. So I'm asking you to please remember the homeless during this holiday season. Your support will really make a difference. Thanks so much, and God bless you.
From the John Henry's Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Studios, this is KLMS Lincoln, the capital city's Husker Authority.
This is SportsCenter.
I'm Christine Lisi. The news is not good for the Bills and Von Miller. The star pass rusher will miss the rest of the season with a torn ACL. He's already had surgery. The loss of a player Buffalo brought in to be its closer in the postseason dramatically changes the mindset of its defense, explains ESPN's Marcus Spears.
As a collective, these guys can do a lot of damage with their skill set. I think you have to go back into that mindset as opposed to let's let Von get to the quarterback and everybody will feast off of that. Mm-hmm. One of these guys are going to have to step up and take the mantle and say, I'll be the guy to make the play, because we knew Von wouldn't.
Rams defensive tackle Aaron Donald out against the Raiders tomorrow with a high ankle sprain. Aaron Judge, perhaps the greatest example of betting on yourself. Judge, who turned down a 7-year, $213 million offer from the Yankees opening day and had one of the greatest seasons ever in Major League Baseball, got a mega contract from New York, agreeing to a 9-year, $360 million deal with the Yankees. NBA Lakers will be without LeBron James and Anthony Davis tonight against the Raptors.
ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Progressive Commercial Insurance flexes to fit your business's needs. From quick repairs to adjustable coverages and even payment options, Progressive Commercial makes it easy to get what you need. Quote today in as little as 6 minutes at progressivecommercial.com.
Listen to this station anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Odyssey. That's AUDACY.
'Twas the night before approval, and I heard all through the city. I want a nicer, newer car, but my credit, oh, what a pity. I wanted a truck, mama, an SUV, but maybe a car'd be more practical. We'll see. There arose such a noise on my radio. I knew right then I had to go see Approved by Joe. He asked, have you been turned down before? Still making payments on that old sled? Worried about getting Scrooged? Come here instead. With very quick work and very little pain, I heard Approved by Joe call them by name. On Chris, on Josh, on Sam, Don, and Lorenzo, on Andrea, on Kendall. Let's get these customers handled. When what to my wondering eyes did appear? With $5 down, a credit approval, my dear. Joe wants your trade, he'll pay more than anyone, and his team won't quit until they get your deal done. With our For the People credit approval process, bring us $5, bring us your trade, we'll take out the stress. I heard him exclaim as I had the store in sight. Happy approvals to all, and to all a nicer, newer ride. I'm Joe Clemens, and I'm your dealer for the people. Come see us at Capital City Automax or online at approvedbyjoe.com, approvedbyjoe.com, www.approvedbyjoe.com.
All terms subject to approval, some minimum requirements.
Hello, neighbor. It is Animal for Super C Convenience Stores. They're locally owned, super friendly, and a place for hot snacks and cool drinks. Got that road trip coming up? Gotta get some road food. Soft touch car washes. They've got that. And super deals every day. Special discounts for their loyalty programs. Ask about that at the counter. Each of their 10 locations set up to serve the individual neighborhood. And you know, they've got grocery items, milk, bread, and so much more. Super C, my go-to stop. Make it yours. Super C, where they're always happy to see you. And don't forget the ice.
Hi, this is Joe Cordell with the law firm Cordell & Cordell. Divorce can be complicated, especially if children are involved. If you're a father and want to protect your role in your children's lives, remember Cordell & Cordell. We've helped men with matters like these for 30 years, and we'd love to help you.
Contact Cordell & Cordell to schedule an appointment with one of our firm's Lincoln area attorneys, a partner men can count on. 233 South 13th Street, Suite 1100, Lincoln, Nebraska 68508. Online at CordellCordell.com.
For extra spending money, but to help feed his little sisters?
Or a mother who's in between jobs and sometimes goes to bed hungry so her kids can have dinner. I am the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger. I am hunger in America.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Craftsman Days at Lowe's are going on now. Get limited time savings across the store like $100 off a V20 6-tool combo kit. Plus, enter the Craftsman Days Ultimate Garage Sweepstakes for a chance to win Craftsman products valued at over $10,000. Learn more at Lowe's.com/Ultimate Garage. Offer valid through 12/31 while supplies last. No purchase necessary. Ends 12/31. Residents of 50 USDC 18 or older and age of majority and have a Lowe's.com account. Void where prohibited. See rules at Lowe's.com/Ultimate Garage for entry instructions, odd prices, etc. Sponsor Lowe's.
Oh yes, Christmas time. Sleigh bells are ringing. We, Cornelius, and the other nutcrackers are set up firmly on the mantle. And all over Lincoln, folks are saving a stocking full of cash on car wash memberships and bundle packs from Jet Splash Car Wash. Is that right? Yes, Cornelius. You could save up to $20 on 3-month memberships, $50 on 6 months, and $120 on annual memberships. Wow! By Cornelius, it is jaw-dropping. Shop online at jetsplash.com.
The journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. At Children International, we know that the journey to end poverty for good begins first with a child. It starts with their first checkup, lesson, opportunity, job. That journey takes commitment from people like you and me to end poverty for good. Learn more at children.org.
There's never any FOMO with the iHeartRadio app. You won't ever have to miss out on your favorite shows and contests with this radio station again. Radio 24/7, 365. We're here when you want us. Stay connected and listen anywhere when you download the free iHeartRadio app.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Back into it, it's hour two. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Evan Bland with us from the Omaha World Herald gets to talk some ball with us here in Nebraska football. The off season that never ends, keeps cranking up. Can find Evan on Twitter at Evan Bland OWH. Evan, this has been fiercely debated since about 8 o'clock last night, the Donnie Raiola decision. Now, no official release as we talk by the university, but media reports out there indicate that he is going to be the O-line pick, the one guy from the Frost staff that gets retained. Reaction to Donnie back in the trenches.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised, and we reported that here this morning too to confirm. But it was, of all the assistants that had been on staff, that was one that I really thought that they would go in a different direction. And to Donovan Raiola's credit, he stuck the interviews that he had with Marcus Satterfield, Matt Rule, and was able to continue on as Nebraska's coach. I think it one of the discussion points that it kind of stirs in me is this idea of how do you really gauge the value of an assistant, especially after just 1 year, where it's, clearly when Scott Frost hired Raiola, he saw something in him, and clearly Matt Rule saw something in him to retain him. And so what we see on the outside, which was, a struggling offensive line and things of that nature, you wonder how much of that really plays into this thing. He doesn't have much of a track record in terms of recruiter. He was with a Division III school, I believe it was, for a short time, had a stint in the NFL, and then jumped into this position at Nebraska. So we'll see how it plays out in that regard. And the other thing that stands out to me with this is when you look at Matt Rule and his decade as a head coach, this sort of hire actually falls in line with what he's done elsewhere, where a number of different assistants that he's hired over time have come from maybe minor NFL backgrounds, or they were maybe directors of player personnel or things behind the scenes, and they became assistant coaches. And he's actually had some success with guys like that. Guys like Elijah Robinson, who's the D-line coach at Texas A&M, or Fran Brown, who's now a DB's coach at Georgia. I mean, these were guys that Matt Rule gave a chance to when the resumes said, maybe. So I think that's interesting. And you look at his current crop of assistants that we know of right now, a lot of guys in their mid-30s. Raiola, I think, turns 40 here this week. So he falls into that line too. But I think clearly when you look at the big picture, Matt Rule has a vision for the kinds of assistants that he wants to retain and keep on staff. And through some of those traits, Donovan Raiola has clearly shown those. And now he's going to stick with the Huskers moving forward.
Evan Bland's with us here at Hail Varsity Radio. And Evan, before we get back into what this retention of Donovan Raiola means, can we quickly spend some time on John Garrison? That was a weird 15-minute report last night. John Garrison's going to be the next offensive line coach at Nebraska. And what was up with that? Do you know?
Well, I mean, when a leak like that comes out, I think that was Football Scoop who put that out. They're really well connected with agents, especially. So maybe there was a miscommunication there. Maybe it was John Garrison himself who thought he had an in to something there. But it was weird because typically those guys are pretty plugged in to that level of the industry. And so for them to backtrack quickly was odd. There's no doubt about it. And I think that was another layer to this thing is, fans know who John Garrison is. He's been a Nebraska assistant before. And so I think by by most measures, he's considered to have a pretty good tenure here when he was here previously. So maybe that added a little bit to the public angst of keeping Raiola when you think that Garrison could have been in play. So I don't know if Garrison wanted to be here, if he thought he would be here, what the particulars were at that point. But, again, it didn't turn out that way. And I think when you look at what Rule has done with offensive line coaches in the past, he's kind of cycled through a number of them. He's had, a guy here for 2 years and a guy there for 1 year before they move on, different things like that. So having a name guy, I know, was something a lot of fans were looking for. And they got a guy whose name they know. It just turned out to be different than maybe what they expected.
Evan Bland with us. I look at Garrison's path, right? And he and Barney Cutton not only recruited some good linemen, but guys that went on to the next level. Some are still playing, some are retired. Reached out to a handful of those guys last night, and it was news to them about John Garrison. It was a wish list item. And I just wonder if he's in line for a co-coordinator as well as a position coach, right? Because he's done really well at NC State, and he's produced award winners. He's produced NFL guys. When he was in Lincoln, he was responsible, being a Blue Springs, Missouri kid. He did a wonderful job of recruiting the Kansas City area. So 500-mile radius region, he was wonderful with for Nebraska and Bo. You fast forward to being in Carolina now, you wonder with Beck moving on if there's a potential for him to either get a bump or some upward mobility as far as responsibility. And I believe that Raiola wasn't a first choice probably for Rule, but I think as hands-on as Rule can be with the offensive line, I think this is a perfect opportunity to mold Raiola with what type of offensive line play Rule wants. I don't think we really know, do you, Evan, just what Nebraska has in the offensive line because they haven't been full strength under Raiola.
Oh, right. I mean, it's hard to evaluate what Raiola's performance was because, you had a guy who was suspended last year. You had, multiple injuries crop up with guys like Prohaska, and so it's tough to, how much of that do you put on the coach? I don't know. But again, there's so much more to it than I think what we even see just on game days. The Raiola thing is interesting too. I think maybe it'll make more sense as we go along and the rest of the staff is assembled, because when you think about last year when Nebraska was looking for an offensive line coach, and they went through a couple options, and I think it was safe to say that Raiola was not the number one choice at that time, but he was the number one choice in terms of the money that they had available for an assistant. And so you wonder, with this pool of $7 million now for assistant coaches that Nebraska has, which is awfully competitive nationally, how does that thing get divvied up? Because like I said earlier, you look at some of these assistants and you've got a lot of guys in their 30s. There aren't many exceptions to that. Ed Foley's been around for a while. Satterfield, I think, is in his mid-40s and has experience. But a lot of these guys you would think would be on the lower end of some of the pay scales, relatively speaking, 400,000, 500,000. I think Raiola makes somewhere in that range right now. And so depending on how the rest of this thing shakes out, maybe there'll be more light shed on that. There's still no defensive coordinator, and a guy named Jim Leonard just became available, who's leaving Wisconsin. That's a guy who could command $1 million or more. That's not unheard of in the Big Ten anymore. So, does hiring somebody at a relative bargain allow you to go out and bring in a more high profile assistant somewhere else that Matt Rule also trusts? So we'll see how all that plays out. But, I think the other thing that's a little bit different about this pattern too is Raiola has not had a connection with Matt Rule. Everybody else has worked with him at the Panthers or had run-ins with him at Temple or wherever else. That's not the case with Raiola. So it's going to be a really fascinating decision, I think, to evaluate in the coming years. And we'll see, if Matt Rule's eye for coaching talent is as good as what his eye has been elsewhere in terms of prospecting.
You nailed it with the eye for coaching talent. Another box that is checked with Raiola is the connection to Jim Leonhard. And also, you want guys that have either coached in or played in the Big Ten. Donnie Raiola is one of those guys with his time at Wisconsin. Last thought here on just the jury part of Raiola. And for me, it's the jury's out. And I know the O-line wasn't great, specifically when they had to run the football. That's been a Nebraska problem for a long time. How much of that is emphasis on the run technique, or did he have a fighting shot at all? Was it knife and gunfight type deal because of his offensive coordinator and Whipple wanting to chuck the football all the time? I don't know that dynamic or that match was a great fit with philosophy, right? Raiola seems to be a guy that wants to pound the football, or was brought in to pound the football, and there's old Whip wanting to throw the football on empty, right, on fourth and short. So difference in philosophy. Maybe that was not a great fit from the get-go.
Maybe. I mean, the whole idea of complementary football sort of eluded Nebraska and has eluded Nebraska for a while. So, I mean, if you're a great O-line coach, like you said, and your offensive coordinator wants to throw the ball, and your offense gets outpossessed by 15 minutes a game, it's tough to sort of evaluate that. And offensive line, more than most positions, most likely, if you're Nebraska or any major school, you're not going into the transfer portal and bringing in impact offensive linemen. There just aren't that many of them. You can rebuild quickly at receiver. You can bring in a quarterback, defensive back. You can find speed. But if you find a quality O-lineman in the portal, they're going to be getting 30 or 40 offers. That's just how the market has been. And so, the real mark of an O-line coach right now is not just bringing in talent, but then being able to develop and mold that talent. And obviously in 1 year, you're not able to evaluate any of that, at least from that O-line perspective. So, if he's being asked to run block more, if there's more of an emphasis on possessing the football and winning in ways that Iowa's and the Minnesotas of the world do, then you're probably looking a little bit better. But again, it's so hard to evaluate one position, especially offensive line, when you have 1 year. You had a mishmash of philosophies on that staff last season. It's going to be a lot more aligned moving forward. And so, we'll see how it goes. One thing I'll say about Matt Rule so far is the moves that they've made, he's made with conviction. I mean, not the Mickey Joseph decision was out of his hands, obviously, but you retain Raiola. Your first commit is a 0-star receiver who has speed. I mean, that's coming from a coach who has conviction for what he wants to do and what he believes in. And so it's going to be really fascinating to watch it play out.
Well, it should be noted, Evan, that as of today, Bryce Turner got bumped from a 0-star to a 3-star. So read into that what you will.
Get a Nebraska offer, you're up to a 3.
But back to the offensive line, Evan, with as much as Matt Rule emphasized in his press conference and in previous years, lines of scrimmage, do you think that Matt Rule might be a little bit more hands-on with the offensive line under Donovan Raiola than most head coaches might be?
Yeah, I think that's certainly possible. I think he's more hands-on with a lot of his coaches. I'm working on a piece for this weekend, having sort of listened to a number of his assistants at previous stops kind of talk about their relationship with Matt Rule. And, he's a guy who absolutely pours into the guys who are under him. And that's not to say that he micromanages or whatever, but he doesn't also just sort of leave them to do their own thing. Like there's very much of an interaction, an interactive, I suppose, component to what they do. And so, I think he likes having younger coaches. He likes the energy. He likes guys who are themselves moldable and willing to adjust and learn and try different things. And so, again, Raiola's relatively young in this industry. He's just turning 40, not a ton of college football experience as a coach, somebody who is not set in his ways or has an established way of doing things. So it'll be interesting. And I think whether that's Rule pouring into Raiola or that's Rule, coming in and being more direct with some of the players, I think that position will get more attention than maybe it has in Nebraska in the recent past.
Evan, real quick, do you think Leonard could land at Purdue, or do you think there's a better shot he could land in Lincoln, or are you taking the field?
That's a great question. I mean, how about him coming out and breaking his own news after there had been reports that he was staying on at Wisconsin? It's interesting because, like, when a guy like that becomes available, the knee-jerk reaction to the first thing you think of is, okay, where is he from, and can he sort of migrate back that way? Well, he's leaving where he was from. And so I would be curious to know if he is motivated to stay in the Big Ten and would want to face his alma mater on a year-in, year-out basis, or if he would rather go elsewhere. But, I mean, he's a Big Ten guy. It would make a lot of sense. If he were to become the Purdue head coach, man, that would be a big change from Jeff Brohm as one of the big offensive masterminds in the sport to a guy who's one of the leading defensive guys. And I think it's possible, too, that you could see him end up in the NFL down the road. I mean, the Green Bay Packers came after him a couple years ago, if you recall, and so maybe he kind of figures now's the time to jump to the next level too. So I think I would probably take the field at this point on his next destination. But if you're Nebraska, man, I mean, you've got some money to work with. Again, multiple Big Ten coordinators are making north of 7 figures at this point. Put an offer out there. Make him say no. And as we've learned over the years, sometimes you don't know what guys are thinking. You have to go out there, make the offer, and then let them decide, and we'll see what happens.
Evan Bland with us. Evan, take care. Thanks for the time today.
Thanks, guys.
The holidays are here, and it's time to celebrate at Hale Varsity Club. Whether you're looking for an intimate business lunch or a 100-person holiday party, Hale Varsity Club offers an elevated experience with food and drink packages sure to please any crowd. There are only a few premium dates left in December. Visit HaleVarsityClub.com to learn more about the private events and book yours now.
If you're not already a Hale Varsity subscriber, what are you waiting for? Sign up for a Hale Varsity subscription to receive exclusive breaking news coverage of Nebraska football, volleyball, and more. Subscriptions include 10 print issues of the Hale Varsity magazine per year, the annual Hale Varsity football yearbook, plus complete access to everything on HaleVarsity.com. Visit HaleVarsity.com to sign up today and get your first month free.
Uh-oh, Brad's buzzed. Oh, yeah? Yeah, he's starting with the woots. And now a speech.
I just want to say that friendship is about heart and brain. Who's with me?
Good thing is, he knows when he's buzzed.
And my brain is saying, when it's time to go home, somebody call me a ride.
Love that guy.
Me too. Know your buzzed warning signs? Call for a ride when it's time to go home. Buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
If you're not already a Hale Varsity subscriber, what are you waiting for? Sign up for a Hale Varsity subscription to receive exclusive breaking news coverage of Nebraska football, volleyball, and more. Subscriptions include 10 print issues of the Hale Varsity magazine per year, the annual Hale Varsity football yearbook, plus complete access to everything on HaleVarsity.com. Visit HaleVarsity.com to sign up today and get your first month free.
Dell Technologies' Days of Deals for Business start now with fresh, limited quantity deals on tech to drive productivity. Save on select performance laptops and desktops powered by 12th Gen Intel Core processors. Don't forget special pricing on the latest monitors, docks, and accessories, plus free shipping on everything, and special financing with Dell Business Credit. Call a Dell Technologies advisor at 877-ASK-DELL. That's 877-ASK-DELL.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack, but not with ZipRecruiter. Its powerful technology actively finds and invites qualified candidates to apply to your job. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you the needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it. It's Hail Varsity, Nebraska basketball back at it. They head to, is it just John Cougar, or is it John Cougar Mellon Kent Country? I forget, but it's Indiana. It's Assembly Hall. It's the candy-striped warm-ups, all those good things. We welcome in the Pride of Ord, Husker basketball standout and assistant with the Pius girls. Andy Markowski with us, Markowski _. Andy, how'd you celebrate the Creighton win? First there, we'll start there.
Well, I tell you what, I was coming off the heels of a Maryland, Nebraska women's upset. My wife and I were in Washington, D.C. airport at the bar watching the Creighton, Nebraska men's game. So all in all, it was certainly an easy travel day home when you're having a chance to watch both those wins.
Well, let's start with Alexis and the Husker women. And, man, 90 points. What a job done by Coach Williams and company. And just a pretty complete performance. You had to be smiling.
Yeah, they had a really good second half. Maryland has certainly had our number. I think we were 0-15 up to that point in the Big Ten, and our better players really played well. I mean, Jazz had a great game. Izzy Bourne had a great game. Widener almost a double-double, and then I thought Alexis was really solid in the second half. So. For this team to be good and for teams to win league road games, your best players have to play well. And in the second half, I thought, all four of those really competed. And, I think hopefully that gives them a little bit of confidence as tonight will be a difficult Wisconsin and then a couple of good non-conference games to get you into the Christmas break.
Before you look ahead to Wisconsin, what changed between that Virginia Tech game and that Maryland game? It looked like two Husker women's teams. I know you have the competition. Virginia Tech's a very good basketball team this year, but what changed on the Husker side of things?
Well, the fourth quarter was strange, right? I mean, if you look at Alexis had hit a three to end the third quarter to have it at 10, where you felt like you had a little bit of momentum, and then that fourth quarter just really got away from them. And I'm not saying that they quit because it's a tough group, but certainly it was a long quarter, nothing was falling offensively. So, you take the fourth quarter off the board. I thought they were competitive in the Virginia Tech game, and they're really good. I mean, they have the ACC Player of the Year, and they got two transfer guards that were all conference players. So Virginia Tech is going to be probably a 2 or 3 seed in the tournament, at home, coming off of a Puerto Rico trip that I think was probably too many road games in a row. In the Maryland game, I think they caught some energy. They saw the ball go through the hoop and were able to, to just put a really complete half together. But give Virginia Tech credit. Certainly, they own Nebraska in that fourth quarter, and give Nebraska credit to come back and win a really hard place to win at Maryland.
Andy Markowski's with us. Husker basketball on our mind. Hail Varsity Radio. Andy, with the Creighton win. What can that do for Fred and this team this season?
Well, certainly, you feel better about yourselves. I mean, I think Nebraska fans, very affected. I started, what caught my attention is I saw the Purdue State score a couple days earlier, and I think Purdue, it was only like a 10-point game where you're like, okay, like everybody just kind of said, hey, Boston College isn't very good, Florida State's not very good. And I said, in my mind, I'm like, those teams might not be as bad as what maybe people thought on paper because Nebraska didn't get much credit, right? We've been down. So it can help. It certainly is a confidence builder. I think it rallies, a fan base. It puts energy back in PBA. Creighton is, didn't play their best game, but I felt the game plan, the ability to grind through a game plan when things weren't going great, and certainly having Walker back. If they would have had him the first 5 or 6 games, I don't know how many wins or losses would have. That changes a lot, but obviously he changes how they play and gives them another scoring option. And, having him moving forward, playing at a high confidence level. But, they may go and lose by 20 tonight against a really good Indiana team and lose to a really good Purdue team on Saturday. I don't know if that changes that look of the season, but I feel better about them, and I'm sure they feel better about themselves having, just an outstanding win and a tough place to play.
Now, you mentioned, Andy, a tough stretch awaits this Husker basketball team. And before we dive into the nitty-gritty, I need your take. The candy-striped warm-up pants, fashion faux pas, or classic basketball look?
I think the historic programs, need to keep that tradition, right? I mean, that's what makes Indiana, it's unique to them. It's special. It's probably a top 5 venue to play in, and all of that plays into the, just what Bob Knight created in 30 years of a highly successful, one of the, most storied programs in college basketball.
Bob Knight probably still doesn't and didn't then care about fashion. And he's kind of a throwback John Wayne type. So if they're tough enough for him, I think you can rock the candy stripes. Pretty iconic. Let's talk about tonight's matchup. Trace Jackson Davis, fantastic, but Indiana is mortal when it comes to physicality. They're tough, but Rutgers is one of those throwbacks, tough, rough rim protector teams, and that's where Indiana stubbed their toe. Fair to say, Andy, this is a more physical Nebraska team that may be able to hang around to compete a little bit longer because of how they're built this year?
They have been. I mean, Walker's 23, Griesel's 23, Vanderbilt's 23. These guys have played a lot of college basketball, and Gary is a veteran, tough-minded, willing to go in and compete and rebound. Even Blaise Keita and Wilhelm coming off the bench, they bring a mentality of physicality. So that they are not going to be intimidated. Now, can we find ways to score? Give Fred credit. I thought he was really creative on how they used Walker, and then obviously found Sam in kind of an NBA post-up game were really the only two areas that they could manufacture a lot of shots. They're going to be challenged at Indiana finding ways to score against a really athletic, team that pressures, not like St. John's in the full court, but Indiana will really get up and deny and make things difficult in the half court. So if they can find some baskets, I don't think Indiana, is super talented offensively. I mean, they can go through some scoring droughts where I think defensively we can hang in there a little bit, but certainly a challenge. Rutgers, having just beat them, Coach Woodson will have their attention, but they do go to Arizona next. I think they have Kansas to follow that. So it's still a little bit of a trap game for Indiana. And, how well can we handle a big win too, right? That's another question that we'll find out tonight.
Andy, what does Nebraska need to do tonight in front of that tough Assembly Hall crowd? It's a great venue to play in, but it is an imposing home court advantage for the Hoosiers. So what does Nebraska need to do well tonight to be able to try and negate that and stay in this game?
Yeah, I think they need to find some shots for their shooters. I thought Creighton did a really good job of face guarding and not giving us some of our better shooters open looks, and that's what really opened Walker up to drive. But I think in order for us to score in the 70s, we're going to have to make some perimeter jump shots. So I'm sure Fred's looking at some creative ways to get some of his shooters more good shots. And the second thing, anytime you play in the league, and Nebraska did a good job against Creighton, you just have to stay attached. You just have to stay at 2 points, 4 points, 3 points, lead by one. You have to be really careful not to get down 10, 11 where, the crowd's into the game and it makes those, the finish of those games more difficult. But if you can stay attached and keep some game pressure on teams that are expected to win, I felt Creighton felt that pressure. They didn't shoot it well late. There was kids that didn't want to take shots late. So when you're up by 10, it's easy to take a shot and make or miss. There's no pressure there. But when you're, when it's a 1, 2, 3 point game, I think shooters feel that pressure. And, if you can stay attached, make a couple plays late, you can still road game. So, it'll be important for them to get off to a good start and, manage it in 4-minute increments, media timeout to media timeout, and, try to stay as attached as you can and, make some shots down the stretch, make some plays and find a way to win.
Andy Markowski with us, Husker Standout, Hail Varsity Radio. Andy, before we say goodbye, once your early season, I know it's December, but your crop report, so to speak, early impressions of Big Ten men's action, and then, of course, the Big Ten women from a projection standpoint. What do you think's the number for the league this year for the men and for the women?
Yeah, it's early. Certainly the women's side is a lot deeper than it was a year ago. I thought the league was kind of 6 deep, and then it dropped off. I think this year the league goes really 10 deep with really quality teams that are probably going to be in the mix for an NCAA tournament. I don't think that the back end of the men is as strong. I think it took a little step back, and I don't know if the top end is good enough to prove that it's a top 2 or 3 league in the country. You look at Michigan State. I certainly think Purdue is legit. Indiana is legit. So I think the Big Ten men is probably 7-ish to my eyes. But when you play 20 league games, injuries. Michigan already just had an ACL, right? So it's such a long grind. You have to stay healthy. You have to catch some breaks. But the men's side of it doesn't appear to be elite, but, it's always good. The middle of the pack is, it's hard to win on the road. The middle of the pack still has good teams with good players that can beat you. I look at like Minnesota, Northwestern, those programs appear to be down a little bit. So, I think it's a chance for Nebraska to kind of jump up into that, that top, 9-ish. Could they sneak into a 9 spot? We'll see. Creighton's one win, but I do feel like this team it has the pieces that fit together, and it appears that they're playing for each other and together, and when that happens, you can have a successful season.
Andy, last thought here: the impact of Derek Walker and what he did in the game on Sunday, did that change your expectations for the season this year? We got about 30 seconds left.
No, I knew what he could do. I mean, Fred runs a ton of offense through him, and I think I made reference to it in the St. John's game. If they would have had him, that they can alleviate pressure by putting the ball in his hands in the middle of the floor. They really missed that in that St. John's game. I think the thing that changed my mindset was their ability to rotate and defend and rebound in a tough environment against a really good team. That travels. I mean, that you could take that anywhere in the Big Ten, and if you can deliver that type of effort and energy and length and toughness, you have a chance to win Big Ten games. I think that's where my mind's at right now. That defense will travel and give them a chance to be competitive.
Andy Markowski. Andy, have a good ball game tonight. Thanks for the time.
All right, guys. Thanks.
Dell's Days of Deals start now with fresh limited quantity deals each day on tech to power every passion. Save on select XPS laptops and Alienware PCs powered by 12th Gen Intel Core processors. Don't forget special pricing on the latest monitors, docks, and accessories, plus free shipping on everything and monthly payment options with Dell Preferred Account. Just call 877-ASK-DELL for Days of Deals savings. That's 877-ASK-DELL, 877-ASK-DELL.
Okay, smile naturally. Perfect.
Cam's photography knows wedding season ramps up in a flash.
Smidge closer.
They need to say I do to a studio assistant before clients go full Bridezilla.
I'm so sorry. I have to get a different lens. I'll be right back.
Indeed can help them hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. We instantly connect you with quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your job description. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
2000, 2008, 2022. When it comes to the economy, those are some scary years. .com crash, housing crash, and the roller coaster we're going through right now. It's a dangerous time to not know your numbers. But over 31,000 businesses have the confidence and clarity they need because they rely on NetSuite by Oracle, the #1 cloud financial system. NetSuite gives you visibility and control of financials, inventory, HR, planning, and budgeting. Manage risk, get reliable forecasts, improve margins. Everything you need, all in one place. So, how do you prepare for uncertain times? The answer, NetSuite. NetSuite helps you identify rising costs, automate your business processes, and easily see where to save money. That's why 93% of customers say they improved their visibility and control when they upgraded to NetSuite. What are you waiting for? NetSuite is offering a one-of-a-kind flexible financing program. Head to netsuite.com/radar. netsuite.com/radar.
Head to ESPNLincoln.com now and enter for your chance to win a $25 Jet Splash Car Wash gift card. Jet Splash Car Wash gift cards make the perfect holiday gift for anyone on your list and excellent stocking stuffer. Go to ESPNLincoln.com now and enter for your chance to win a $25 Jet Splash gift card, and head to JetSplash.com to see complete info on their locations, hours, memberships, and offers. Jet Splash Car Wash, Lincoln's premier spot for a spotless wash online at JetSplash.com.
At CDW, we get you can't lock up your devices. Your voice needs the freedom to roam. And wherever they go, productivity is key. But with Microsoft Surface devices pre-configured and deployed by CDW experts, you'll get multi-layered security and seamless experiences to help productivity really take off. IT orchestration by CDW. People who get it. Find out more at cdw.com/surface.
He's in his 30s, but sounds like he was born with a stogie in one hand and a brew in the other.
Now, say my name.
It's Schmidt on Hail Varsity Radio.
I got the body of a taut, pre-teen Swedish boy.
Back with you, Jock Doc Wednesday, Nebraska Orthopedic Center. Dr. Brandon Seifert with us. Dr. Brandon, how are you?
I'm good, guys. How are you doing?
We're hanging in. One of us in the room's a Bronco fan. One of us is laughing at Denver as they fell in that shootout 10-9 to Baltimore last Sunday.
Isn't that called the Stupor Bowl or something like that?
I don't know, man. There's not enough gummies in the low dough to make you want to sit through that thing.
All I know is I was watching that game, or I wasn't watching the game, and then the fourth quarter rolls around and I go, the Broncos are up by 6. Maybe I better watch them beat the Ravens. And I flip it on, and of course they rip my heart out.
Give it time. Well, there are a number of Baltimore fans that love just checking out Lamar Jackson, how dynamic he is, and he's a different quarterback in a great way, where his athleticism's on display, and the guy's really worked hard on being a thrower, and man, he's just instant offense, but he's going to be slowed down, a sprained PCL, Dr. Brandon, and that's a little bit of chunk of flesh or pound of flesh that Denver fans can take with them. Not that you ever want to hurt a guy. But tell us about a sprained PCL. I know there's different grades of sprains, but the responsibility of that ligament, the PCL, and how it affects a guy like Lamar.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we think about PCL anatomically, we may have talked about this in the past. I was trying to remember back, but at any rate, anatomically, we're looking at, it's a cruciate ligament. So there's two kind of central cruciate or crossing ligaments in the middle of the knee. There's the one in the front we always talk about, the anterior cruciate ligament, or the ACL. This would be the one behind that, called the posterior cruciate ligament. Not injured as much. If you were to flip a coin, say which is the better of the two, the PCL injury most likely is the better of the two to have. Lower grade sprains, about grade 1, grade 2, you can get around with doing that non-operative treatment. Typically with those, grade 3s become a little more controversial in terms of do you fix them or leave them alone. They're talking a pretty early return for him, so my assumption with him would be kind of low grade, grade 1, grade 2. Most of these end up being around kind of grade 2 sprains, where you've kind of stretched those fibers maybe by about 25 or 50%, and that's most likely what he's looking at.
3 weeks, 4 weeks, that's the timeline. You have a fierce wild card race right now with not only Baltimore, but some other teams in the AFC, and that divisional race, too, between them and Cincinnati. There's a half-game lead for Baltimore. So a thought here from a pain management standpoint and a mobility hindrance. You come back from this thing 4 weeks. What are you doing in the meantime to treat this? And then what's the re-injury rate like if you're coming off a PCL sprain?
With these, the early treatment, there's some kind of controversy about what to do with this. How aggressive are you with therapy early on versus what kind of bracing do you use? The bracing technique I like is you can put them in one of these hinged knee braces, kind of locked, and a certain amount of what we call kind of flexion or knee bend, just to take some pressure off that PCL. and then you allow them to do some kind of early range of motion, usually with assistance with a therapy or athletic trainer, kind of early on to allow for some healing. If you've got more time to kind of spend on this, you can kind of take that process out 4 to 6 weeks if need be, especially for higher grade sprains. For some of the lower grade sprains, like your grade 1, you're probably not doing that. Your grade 2s, you're probably doing a hybrid of that, where maybe you're doing 2 or 3 weeks of that kind of limited range of motion. But you can still get pretty aggressive on the quad strengthening. With him, they're going to probably be aggressive and shoot for that kind of 3 to 4 week timetable. I've been impressed with how some of our college kids do respond to these. And, initially that first 7 to 10 days don't look that great. And then all of a sudden that second, third week, they start to look fantastic. And then they're back out there running around before you really want to release them to do it. And so that would be the course that he's likely going to take. And so you've got hard therapy, at least kind of starting around that 2.5, 3 week time frame with these athletes. A little bit of rest in the front end would be kind of my summary of it.
Dr. Brandon Seifert's with us here. It's a Jock Doc Wednesday here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Dr. Brandon, you mentioned the fact that Lamar may have gotten a little bit lucky, the fact that this was a PCL instead of the MCL. And I want to dive into what the difference is in terms of the force that's applied on your knee. Well, what leads to an ACL injury and what leads to a PCL injury? What's the difference there?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So if you're going, let's rewind here and go to ACL. So anterior cruciate, when we talk about most often, that would be the one that's in the front. And essentially what that's doing is that's stopping the shin or the tibia from sliding forward. And so if you think about as you're moving forward as an athlete, you're cutting, you're pivoting, you're shifting, all that force is really the foot is planting into the ground. That force is transferring, up through foot, through ankle, through tibia into the knee, and that knee basically slides forward. So the majority of motions that we're doing is in that front or anterior direction. And so that's going to be a more important ligament that's just more vital to the functions we're naturally doing. The PCL is more for the same structure, that shin of the tibia. That's when it kind of slides back. More rare to have a PCL injury anyhow, just with the mechanism it takes to do that. It's basically, if you think about riding in a car, and your knee's bent at about 90 degrees, and that knee, at least the top part of the shin, runs into the dashboard and pushes that tibia shin backward. That's how you would injure your PCL from that mechanism. So on the football field, typically what we'd see, obviously somebody's running into the front of your knee while the foot's planted, or more often than not, you go down on the field and that top of the shin lands on top of a player, then somebody lands on top of you, and then there's that directed force posterior to the back. And that's how those injuries basically differ. And so it's not that one versus the other is necessarily a worse injury. It's more about how do you use your knee, what do those ligaments function as, and what's the sport that you're doing. And really, it's the ACL you're using more often than the PCL in those activities in terms of the really hard cutting and shifting / pivoting activities.
Dr. Brandon Seifert's with us, Nebraska Orthopedic Center, at Jock Doc Wednesday. Lamar Jackson, his PCL sprain, our topic. Now, with the PCL, does this sprain and discomfort, is it more affecting lateral mobility or north-south kind of explosiveness? Because Lamar's got it all. He can get 0 to 60 real quick, but he's also elusive. Where does this kind of hang around and limit his running ability?
Sure. Purely from kind of a anatomic structure, it would really be more kind of that posterior directed kind of force is still kind of its mainstay of its function. However, just the trauma of having this to your knee, if you think about the amount of force it takes to injure the PCL, that force that's applied to the knee obviously injures all the tissues in that knee. So that surrounding structure of your knee is called a capsule. It's basically like a balloon that surrounds the knee. That structure is injured with this. There's usually some bruising in the cartilage that happens. And so you start adding all those things up, and really all of the above in terms of what is impacted, lateral movement, pivoting motion. It's anything that, basically that knee is involved in is going to struggle a bit just because your knee, it's injured, it's hurt. And really from the ligament standpoint, it's not necessarily the ligament itself that's the limiting, when I say functional factor, it's actually just more the trauma kind of diffusely with the knee that really limits some of their playing ability, which for him could be quite, dramatic in the sense of he's not necessarily a drop back passer. He's very elusive and extremely athletic. So this will slow him down some. And obviously, as you mentioned earlier, he's always running for his life. So this could be pretty tough for him when he comes back early.
Dr. Brandon, have a good rest of your week. Thanks for a few minutes today.
All right, fellas. You all take care.
Could you please pass the potatoes?
Uncle Bob, why are you singing?
With all the rewards we are getting, with the Navy Federal Credit Union's cash rewards card, I hired a singing coach for caroling.
But it's summer.
Since we get up to 1.75% cash back on all our holiday purchases, there is cheer to last all year.
Please stop.
These potatoes are delicious, by the way.
Get cheer to last all year with Navy Federal Credit Union. Our members are the mission. Insured by NCUA.
So I switched to Boost Mobile and got this free Samsung Galaxy A23 5G phone.
Why do you think they call it the Galaxy?
Maybe because the Samsung Galaxy A23 has a huge screen, and galaxies are huge gravitationally bound systems of stars rotating around a supermassive black hole.
And the phone is free?
When you switch to Boost Mobile.
Cool. You lost me at gravitational.
Switch to Boost and get a free Samsung Galaxy A3 5G phone. Boost Mobile. Unleash your power. Limited time offer while supplies last. New customers only. Excludes tax. One device offer apply. Only available on certain networks. 5G not available everywhere. Additional restrictions apply. See local Boost Mobile store for details.
'Twas the night before approval, and I heard all through the city. I want a nicer, newer car, but my credit, oh, what a pity. I wanted a truck, mama, and SUV, but maybe a car'd be more practical. We'll see. There arose such a noise on my radio. I knew right then I had to go see Approved by Joe. He asked, have you been turned down before? Still making payments on that old sled? Worried about getting scrooged? Come here instead. With very quick and very little pain, I heard Approved by Joe call him by name. On Chris, on Josh, on Sam, Don, and Lorenzo, on Andrea, on Kendall. Let's get these customers handled. When what? My wondering eyes did appear with $5. Joe on trade, he'll pay more than anyone, and his team won't quit until they get your deal done. With our For the People credit approval process, bring us $5, bring us your trade, we'll take the stress. I heard him exclaim as I had the store in sight. Approvals to all, and to all a nicer, newer ride. I'm Joe Clemens, and I'm your dealer for the people. Come see us at Capital City or online at approvedbyjoe.com, approvedbyjoe.com, www.approvedbyjoe.com.
All terms subject to approval. Some minimum requirements. Ho, ho, ho.
Running on empty? Don't let aging drain your body. Limitless Male can help you recharge safely under medical care. As you age, your body produces less testosterone, which can cause one or more symptoms: trouble sleeping, no energy, loss of muscle mass, poor concentration, belly fat, low sex drive, depression. Limitless Male can eliminate these symptoms with testosterone replacement therapy and re-energize your life. Schedule a free consult at limitlessmale.com.
I'm weatherology meteorologist Ray Miller with your Capital City forecast. A winter weather advisory goes into effect late tonight. Cloudy skies, low of 24, freezing rain and sleet Thursday with a high around 37 degrees. That's the forecast on Lincoln's ESPN. Right now, it's 31.
A basketball doubleheader Friday night as Lincoln Lutheran plays at Lincoln Christian. I'm Jeff Moats. You can join me for the play-by-play of all the action. Coverage begins at 6 o'clock right here.
ESPN Lincoln, FM 101.5 and 1480 AM. Miss us?
Come here, brother. Yeah, bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at HailVarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, butler.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, midweek edition, Hail Varsity Radio, presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Give us a follow on Twitter at Schmidt_radio, at Herbal Essence for Elijah Herbel. And follow the radio show at HVarsity Radio. You can watch Coffee and Cream in the morning. Damon Benning, of course, doing a great job with Andrew and the crew in the morning. So that's 7 to 9. Check that out. It streams there for you. Also on the Herdat platform of their YouTube channel. Hail Varsity Radio on the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Day 2. And if you miss any part of the show, podcasts are available aplenty. And you can check that out. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Give us a rating, good, bad, or ugly. We love the feedback. And then segments you want to hear. If you missed Evan Bland or Mike Babcock from today, those will be individually posted. If you're going to go for the old treadmill death march, got the whole show available for you. Tomorrow, Brandon Vogel, Gary Barnett, Mike Leach, the pirate sighting. I was just watching a little video on YouTube, a pirate walking through coaching and teaching his practice setup, and He was talking about a middle-aged man in the back. I really can't read their eyes. I may or may not have a little tobacco on me, but it's about coaching and the process and how they get their reads in from a quarterback standpoint.
Well, you remember that in-depth story that was in, I think it was in The Athletic about a year ago, where they went and talked with all the old quarterbacks that have been under Mike Leach and talked about the craziness of the quarterback room.
Half the time he's late to a meeting, he's probably talking to us.
Well, that's what they said in the thing.
He's doing some radio show in Lincoln.
Well, yeah, in the middle of a team meeting, he said, "Wait, guys, I got to take this." And he just paused the team meeting for 20 minutes while, in the words of the quarterback, he's talking to some radio show in Nebraska.
Yeah.
And I remember reading that and going,
that was us.
Is that us?
Yeah,
Is that us? So maybe he'll be in the meeting, in the middle of a meeting tomorrow whenever we talk to him.
I think he might be in the middle of recruiting tomorrow.
That's fair. It is that time of year, isn't it?
Yep.
Imagine him just in recruit's living room. Wait, guys, I got to take this. It's Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
We always have fun with him during the holiday. He spilled the beans on Santa a few years back, which was quite good. Unless you had a little one in the car. Reminder to get buckled up. Using your seatbelt saves lives, prevents injuries only if properly worn. Buckle up. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. So, rounding out the week, we are scheduled to have a member of the Nebraska offensive line Friday. Don't know who yet. But they are doing a autograph session from 10, let me get the time right, the downtown 1120 P Street. Our friends at Alumni Hall having an autograph session. And let me pull that up here. Pretty sure it's 10 to noon. 10 to noon, downtown, Alumni Hall, Husker offensive lineman, pipeline jerky. So we're going to talk to one of the linemen, presumably Friday.
Well, you know I love talking offensive line, but looking forward to that.
Yep.
See if you can pull some strings and bring some jerky for us, though.
Right. I'm sure. Elijah's like, most important part, bring jerky for me. Talk to you tomorrow at 4 on Hail Varsity. Thanks.